Breakups are never easy, but this one came with more baggage than I expected. My ex, let's call her Sarah, 26F, and I, 28M, were together for 3 years. We had a good relationship in the beginning, lots of laughter, lots of late-night talks about our future, and what felt like a solid foundation. I truly thought she was the one. We weren't officially engaged, but we had talked about marriage, kids, buying a house together, all the usual long-term plans. I thought we were building a life together. But somewhere along the way, things changed. I started noticing that I was the only one putting in effort. I was the one planning dates, making sure we had time for each other, covering more of the bills when she was short on cash. Meanwhile, Sarah slowly became less invested in us and more focused on what I could do for her. She started making comments about how other guys she knew were more ambitious, how she wished I was more successful, how she wanted to live a lifestyle that my steady but modest-paying job couldn't provide. It was small at first, passing remarks, little digs that I brushed off, but eventually, I realized that no matter what I did, it was never enough. Then, a few months before we broke up, she started pushing the idea of me getting a better job. She'd send me job listings for high-pressure sales positions or corporate jobs that paid double what I was making. When I told her I liked my job, that I enjoyed the stability, that I wasn't interested in chasing some six-figure dream just to keep up with her expectations, she got frustrated. She told me I was wasting my potential, and that she didn't want to be stuck with someone who had no real ambition. That hurt. I had always thought she loved me, not my paycheck. But clearly, I was wrong. The breakup wasn't explosive, it was just cold. She sat me down and told me that she had been thinking about things and didn't see a future with me anymore. She wanted more out of life, and she didn't think I could give it to her. There was no sadness in her voice, no hesitation, just a matter-of-fact decision, as if she was quitting a job she had outgrown. I sat there, feeling like a complete idiot for thinking we had something real. She left. And just like that, 3 years of my life were over. What she didn't know was that 2 weeks later, I won the lottery. Winning the lottery should have been the happiest moment of my life, but instead, it felt surreal. It wasn't some crazy, life-changing billion-dollar jackpot, but it was a substantial amount, enough to pay off all my debts, buy a house outright, and still have plenty left over to live comfortably. The kind of money that takes all the stress out of life. I remember sitting there, staring at the numbers, feeling like the universe had just played the biggest joke on me. 2 weeks ago, my girlfriend, the woman I thought I was going to marry, had dumped me because I wasn't rich enough. And now, suddenly, I had more money than I knew what to do with. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I took my time processing it, hiring a financial advisor, setting up investments, making sure I was being smart about it. The last thing I wanted was to make reckless decisions or let the money change me. It felt weird knowing that overnight, my life had completely shifted, and yet, nothing really felt different. I still woke up the next morning in the same tiny apartment, still made my usual coffee, still went to work like nothing had changed. Then, about a month later, Sarah found out. To this day, I still don't know exactly how she found out. I hadn't posted about it anywhere, and I had only told a handful of close friends and family. But suddenly, out of nowhere, she texted me for the first time since the breakup. At first, it was casual, too casual. "Hey, how have you been? I was thinking about you the other day. Hope you're doing okay." It was so obviously fake that I actually laughed out loud when I read it. There was no mention of the breakup, no apology, no acknowledgement of how coldly she had left me, just a random, forced check-in as if we were old friends catching up. I knew something was off immediately, but I played along. I replied politely, keeping it short, and waited. Sure enough, within an hour, she brought up the money. "So, I heard some crazy news. Is it true?" I didn't even have to ask what she meant. I just responded with a simple, "Yep." That's when the floodgates opened. Suddenly, she was gushing about how she had been thinking a lot about us, about how she missed what we had, about how maybe we had broken up too quickly and should talk about things again. It was honestly hilarious. Just a month ago, she was so sure that I wasn't ambitious enough for her. Now, suddenly, she wanted to reconsider? I let her ramble for a while, letting her dig the hole deeper. She talked about how we were always such a great team, how money isn't everything, oh, the irony, how maybe we just needed a little time apart to realize what really mattered. Finally, I just said, Sarah, let's be real. If I hadn't won the lottery, would you be texting me right now? There was a long pause. I could tell she was trying to come up with some kind of lie, something to make it seem like she wasn't being completely obvious. But after a few minutes, all she said was, I mean, it's definitely a sign that we should be in each other's lives again, right? That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I told her no, that there was nothing left to talk about. She flipped. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. She went from being sweet and nostalgic to furious in a matter of seconds. She accused me of leading her on, of being selfish, of changing now that I had money. She even tried to say that I had lied to her, that if I had told her about the lottery sooner, maybe we wouldn't have broken up. That one almost made me lose it. I reminded her that she was the one who left me. That she had literally told me I wasn't ambitious enough and had dumped me before I ever won. I owed her nothing. She ended up blocking me, but not before sending one last message. You'll regret this. Money can't buy you love. She's right about one thing, money can't buy love. But it can sure as hell show you who actually cared about you to begin with. So, AITA for not telling her I won the lottery until after we broke up? Story number 2. AITA for refusing to rename my dog after my sister gave her baby the same name? I never thought I'd be arguing over a name, but here we are. I have a golden retriever named Charlie. He's been with me for almost 5 years, and he's honestly my best friend. I got him during one of the hardest times in my life. I had just gone through a messy breakup, was stuck in a job I hated, and felt completely lost. I was in this dark place where every day felt the same, and I was just going through the motions. Then came Charlie. He was a tiny ball of golden fluff when I first brought him home, clumsy and energetic, always tripping over his own paws. He gave me a reason to get up in the morning, something to care for when I didn't even feel like caring for myself. He was the one thing that pulled me out of that rut, and over the years, he became more than just a pet, he became family. My best friend, my adventure buddy, the one who would sit next to me when I was feeling down and somehow just know when I needed comfort. He's been with me through every major moment in my life since then, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. Now, my older sister, Melissa, 32F, just had her first baby about 2 months ago. We were all thrilled for her. She had been trying to get pregnant for years, and when she finally announced she was expecting, the entire family rallied around her. She went full Pinterest mom mode, planning every tiny detail of the nursery, organizing baby showers, reading parenting books like it was her new full-time job. And honestly, I was happy for her. She had always wanted this, and I was excited to be an uncle. Then, about a week after the baby was born, I found out his name. Charlie. At first, I thought it was hilarious. What were the odds? My dog and my nephew now had the same name. I even joked about it in our family group chat, sending a message like, "Guess Charlie is going to have to learn how to share his name." Face with tears of joy. A few people sent laughing emojis, and it didn't seem like a big deal at all. My mom even said, "Well, at least we know it's a great name," and my dad made a joke about how now he's going to be calling both the baby and the dog by accident. I didn't think anything of it. Until about a week later, when Melissa called me out of the blue. Her tone was completely serious, no warmth, no small talk, just straight to business. She told me, flat out, that I needed to change my dog's name. At first, I actually thought she was joking. I let out a small laugh and waited for her to say, "Just kidding," or something. But she didn't. There was just this long, awkward silence on the phone before she repeated herself, slowly, as if I was too dumb to understand. "You need to change your dog's name." I was stunned. I asked her if she was serious, and she sighed in this exasperated way, like I was the one being difficult. "It's confusing," she said. "It's going to be weird when our parents talk about Charlie, and people won't know if they mean my son or your dog. It's just strange. It makes it feel like my son is less special." That was when I realized, she actually meant it. She wasn't making a light-hearted request. She genuinely expected me to rename my 5-year-old dog because she had just now decided to use the same name for her child. I tried to be reasonable about it. I told her that Charlie had had his name for years, that he knew his name, that changing it now would just be confusing and unfair to him. I even pointed out that she had known for months that I had a dog named Charlie, and she still chose the name anyway. But instead of seeing my side, she doubled down. "Come on," she pressed. "He's just a dog. He doesn't care what you call him." That comment set me off. Just a dog? Just a dog? The same dog who had been with me through some of the hardest times in my life? The same dog who had been more loyal to me than half the people I knew? No. He wasn't just anything. I told her flat out that I wasn't going to change his name. That Charlie was his name, and that was the end of it. She did not take it well. Her voice got sharp as she accused me of being selfish, saying that it was so unfair to her and that this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for her, while my dog was temporary. She made it sound like I was ruining her moment just because I wasn't willing to bend over backward to accommodate her choice. Then she played the guilt card. "Do you really want my son to grow up feeling like he has to share his name with an animal? What if it makes him feel less important? What if it confuses him?" I was done at that point. My dog had been named long before she even got pregnant. It's not like I named him after her kid, it was the other way around. If anyone had a problem with the name situation, it was her problem, not mine. I calmly told her that Charlie's name was staying the same, and if she didn't like it, that was her issue to deal with. She hung up on me. Within hours, the family group chat blew up with messages from my mom, a couple of aunts, and even my grandmother. Melissa had told them all her version of the story, painting it like I was being heartless for not giving up a silly dog's name to make things easier for my nephew. My mom called me, not to demand I change it, but to ask me to at least consider it for the sake of keeping the peace. I stood my ground. I told her that I understood Melissa was emotional right now, but I wasn't changing Charlie's name. Period. Now, my sister isn't speaking to me. She's acting like I personally insulted her son, like I'm deliberately trying to make things harder for her. My mom keeps saying I should just let it go and rename him something close, like Charlie Bear or Chuck. But I refuse. Charlie is his name. He's had it for 5 years. It's not my fault she picked the same one. So, AITA for refusing to rename my dog after my sister gave her baby the same name? Story number 3. AITA for refusing to be friends with my coworker after she used my disability as a joke? I never expected to be writing something like this, but here I am. I, 29M, have hearing loss in one ear, something I've dealt with since childhood. It started after a severe ear infection when I was around 6, and by the time my parents realized how bad it was, the damage was already permanent. My hearing in my right ear is about 30% functional, meaning I can pick up loud sounds but struggle with speech clarity, especially in noisy environments. It's not something I like to bring up, but it's also not something I can ignore. Over the years, I've developed small habits to help me cope. I always sit in a way that lets me hear from my left side, I use subtitles when watching movies, and if I miss something in a conversation, I simply ask people to repeat themselves. Most people are understanding when they realize I have hearing loss. My friends and family don't treat it as a big deal, and my previous coworkers have always been accommodating without making a fuss. I've never felt like it's defined me, and I certainly don't go around asking for special treatment. Then I met Jessica, 26F. Jessica joined my office about a year ago, and at first, she seemed nice enough, outgoing, talkative, always trying to be the center of attention in meetings. She had this way of making herself the loudest voice in the room, always cracking jokes and making sarcastic remarks. I didn't mind it at first. I figured she was just one of those people with a big personality. But after a few months, I started noticing subtle digs. Whenever I asked someone to repeat themselves, Jessica would let out an exaggerated sigh or roll her eyes. If I turned my head to hear better, she'd smirk and whisper to the person next to her. Once, I even caught her mimicking me, tilting her head dramatically, pretending to cup her ear like some cartoon character mocking deafness. It wasn't loud enough for me to call her out directly, but I noticed. And so did others. At first, I convinced myself I was overreacting. I told myself maybe she was just joking, that she didn't mean to be rude. I've had to deal with small, ignorant comments about my hearing my whole life, it comes with the territory. But something about Jessica's attitude felt different. It wasn't just the occasional joke, it was the way she laughed about it with others, the way she treated my hearing loss as if it was some quirky personality trait instead of a real disability. Then, one afternoon, she took it too far. We were in a team meeting, going over a project deadline. Our manager was speaking quickly, and the room was a little noisy, so I missed part of what he said. I leaned forward and politely asked, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Before my manager could even open his mouth, Jessica let out this loud, obnoxious laugh and blurted out, "Oh my God, do you need a hearing aid or something?" The room went dead silent. The moment Jessica's words left her mouth, the entire room froze. The usual chatter and background noise of the meeting vanished, replaced by an awkward, heavy silence. My manager, who had been mid-sentence, paused and turned toward her, his expression unreadable. I felt the weight of every set of eyes in the room shift onto me, waiting to see how I would react. Jessica, however, looked completely unbothered, like she had just said something casual, something light-hearted, instead of mocking a real disability in front of an entire room of people. Heat crept up my neck, but I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. I had spent years learning how to handle moments like this, those offhand, ignorant remarks that people made when they assumed no one would call them out. But something about this moment felt different. This wasn't just a stray comment whispered in passing or a minor slip-up. This was intentional. A joke, made at my expense, designed to get a laugh. But as the silence stretched on, it became clear that no one else found it funny. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat, finally picking up on the tension. She let out a small laugh, trying to brush it off, and muttered something about how it was just a joke and how I shouldn't take things so seriously. But the damage was already done. The meeting carried on, but I barely heard another word of it. My mind kept replaying the moment, over and over, turning it over like a rock in my hand, feeling the sharp edges of it dig into my skin. After the meeting, I gathered my things, ready to leave for the day, when Jessica approached me at my desk. She was smiling, acting as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just humiliated me in front of our colleagues. She leaned against my desk, trying to make small talk, but there was an edge to her voice, a slight hesitation, like she was testing the waters to see if I was going to hold this against her. When I gave her only curt, professional responses, her smile faded. Over the next few days, I made it clear, I wasn't interested in maintaining any kind of friendship with her. I didn't go out of my way to be rude or hostile, but I stopped engaging in casual conversation. If she spoke to me about work, I responded in short, polite answers. But I no longer entertained her jokes, no longer participated in her gossip, no longer played along with the friendly office banter she expected from me. It didn't take long for her to notice. The same person who had once made a joke at my expense was now playing the victim, complaining to our coworkers that I was being cold and dramatic over something that wasn't a big deal. She framed it as if I was punishing her for something harmless, turning myself into the unreasonable one while she played the role of someone who had just made an innocent mistake. Some of my coworkers suggested that I let it go. They told me that office friendships were important, that Jessica didn't mean it, and that I was being too rigid by refusing to move past it. But to me, it wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about knowing who I could trust. If Jessica had made a mistake and sincerely apologized, things might have been different. But she hadn't. Instead, she doubled down, insisted I was too sensitive, and now expected me to pretend none of it happened. I wasn't interested in keeping people like that in my life. So, AITA for refusing to be friends with my coworker after she mocked my hearing loss?